The Honorable Ladies and Gentlemen, we would like to welcome you to our presentation. The title of our presentation today is EFL Learners' Patterns of Responses in Literary Reading, Critical Reading in Practice. There are three presenters in this presentation today. Ibu Wigati Dyah Prasasti and me, Joesasono Oediarti Soelistijowati, and also Pak Lambang Erwanto Suyadjid. We are as lecturers at English Language Education Department, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Universitas PGRI di Buana, Surabaya, Indonesia. Ibu Wigati Dyah Prasasti research interests are in literature, in the EFL context, and critical reading, literary criticism, emphasizing on post-colonial theory. And Ibu Joesasono Oediarti Soelistijowati research interests are in language and language education, particularly focusing on teaching English as a foreign language, while Pak Lambang Erwanto Suyadjid has research interest in literary studies. Let me start with the presentation overview. First of all, we are going to present the introduction, and the next is problem explore, then literature review, continued by method of the study, and after that, the result, and the last is discussion. Some previous studies have claimed that reading comprehension in EFL context has been focusing on learners' understanding of the service level and literal meaning of the text. However, there is a need of inquiring into learners' critical reading ability. Moreover, developing EFL learners' critical reading has been the focus of teaching reading in EFL classes in Indonesia. One of the ways to promote the practice of critical reading is to provide the learners with a text that can be extensively read and interpreted. As we know, literary text is a form of text that may facilitate the learner's wider responses, as the meaning contained in such a text can be explored from different critical angles. The angles can be varied from ideological, political, social, cultural, and even psychological, which allow the learners to be more explorative when trying to provide responses. Problem explored in this study in relation to the learner's ability to explore the meaning carried implicitly in literary text as a part of their critical reading. This study aims at inquiring into a research questions. And the research question here is, how do the EFL learners' patterns of responses as they read a literary text in the form of a fable?
Literature review consists of literary competence, literary reading, literary response theory, and critical reading. In literary competence, having adequate literary competence is needed in order to be able to read and enjoy literary works properly. Spiro argues literary competence is intertwined with linguistic competence in the sense that learners can have an appreciation of literary works when they are able to attend to the meaning of the language in which the works are written. Spiro's literary competence include the learner's ability to relate the text with one's experience and situate literature meanings in a wider socio-cultural context. In literary reading, focuses attention on learners as a reader's experience reading in literary text. The experience of literary reading is concerned more with learners' affective condition when reading a literary text and involves their lived-through meaning and its connection to a text. Literary reading is a complex process of reading, since it focuses on what has been lived through by the learners during a reading of a text. In reader response theory focuses on activating language learners' responses as well as assisting them to improve their responsibility when reading a particular text through the text meaning and structure. The process of responding to the text is a transaction between text and life experience of the readers to evoke meanings. Responses given as readers' personal experience and emotion will affect their responses to the text they read. In critical reading cannot be separated from critical thinking. Critical thinking concerns hierarchical order of cognitive skills, including evaluation, analysis, synthesis, and comprehension. Critical reading not only concerns cognitive activities, but is also related to social practice that applies the reader's critical stance. Method of study consists of participants, data collection, and data analysis. In participants, there are 32 EFL learners as participants of this study. In data collection, the participants read the fable entitled The Fox and the Crow as their assignment. Each participant submitted their written essays responses. In data analysis, the main data of the current study derived from the participants' written essay responses. The content of the participants' written responses were read comprehensively and systematically. The patterns of responses are analyzed on the basis of Weyl-Hoos patterns of interpretation comprising null, textual, transitional, and extra-textual patterns. In result, the sources of data are from the participants' written responses to the fable in the forms of essays. The participants' critical responses in literary reading denote their literary competence, as they relate the text with a wider context, both socio-culturally and personally. The critical responses fall into two categories of patterns of responses. They are transitional responses and extra-textual responses. In transitional responses, the participants would base their written responses on the content of the text and at the same time thought about a wider context outside the text. The participants' whose responses belongs to this category went back and forth between the text and the wider context outside the text. The wider context were based on the participants' views of their own personal experience or the results of the participants' socio-cultural interaction with the world outside the text. I'm sorry, for my presentation there is no video because of technical error in my webcam. Thank you.
So I would like to continue the next slides of our presentation. It is about the results, still about transitional responses. Yeah, so this is the example of from the data that we have analyzed, yeah, concerning the transitional responses involving readers' personal experience. So here, participant 3 and participant 4 explain about their personal experience in relation to the content of the text. The next is the other type of transitional responses. So in this kind of responses, there is an involvement of readers' socio-cultural interaction with other people. So here from the data that we have analyzed, participant 8 and participant 26 tried to relate the content of the text with their sociocultural experience as a result of their interaction with other people. Yeah, so they go back and forth between the text and also their own sociocultural experience in making their responses. The next is extra-textual responses. So besides being able to produce transitional responses, the participants are also able to produce extra-textual responses. So in this pattern of interpretation, the participants will base their written responses on the results of their reflections. Yeah, so reflections here is the key word for extra-textual responses. So they made reflection after reading the literary text. In this category of responses, the text only served as a point of departure of their reflection. The reflections the participants state were based on the self-reflections, reflection on the world, and both the combination of self-reflection and reflection on the world. So here are some data concerning the participants' extra-textual responses. The first is the data about extra-textual response based on self-reflection. So here, participant 27 tried to explain that the story left a deep impression on her and she can take some lessons from the story. While participant 19 here presented extra-textual response based on reflection on the world. Yeah, so she is based her response on the reality happen in the world. And participant 20 over here combine both self-reflection and reflection on the world as the basis of her response. Yeah, so at first she made self-reflection by saying that giving applause can be a rewarding thing, but at the same time can also be a deadly weapon for someone. And at the end of her response, she tried to make reflection that the story is very relevant to the daily life of many people. Means that she made reflection on the world where we lived in. And from the result of the study, there are 3 points that we discussed. The first, the learner's ability to produce transitional and extra-textual patterns of responses in reading literary texts signifies that there is an activation of their epistemic reasoning, denoting the implementation of their critical reading. The epistemic reasoning requires the learner's reflection, in which they need to not only comprehend the literal meaning of the text, but also go beyond the textual world presented in the text. The reading text, together with the wider context outside the textual world the learners read, serve as an arena for the learners to practice their critical reading. So that's the end of our presentation. If you have any question related to our presentation, we would be very happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much for your kind attention, everyone, and have a great day.